Up next on Inside the SCCA, adapt and overcome. On this episode of Inside the SCCA, the super tour that could have never happened, but did. Joining us today, from Cal Club, Mark Smith, and from SCCA National, Mark Coulter. Kevin Coulter. Names, who gives a heck, about names. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. How are you doing?
We're doing really good. So we're here because we had this little thing happen at Buttonwillow about a month ago. We were supposed to do a super tour, and we did actually. And but it was not what you would say the traditional way a super tour works. We got to if anybody watched on the new live stream for the SCCA. They found out that things didn't start on time. The track we were supposed to race on didn't happen. And it was a whole bunch of things. Mark, you've been here in Southern California for how long?
About 35 years.
35 years.
Yeah.
The weather that we've had, so I'm in Pasadena. I live near Pasadena. Mark, you're down in Orange County, right?
Long Beach.
Long Beach, okay.
Yeah.
The weather we've had for the last 2.5 months. Have you ever seen anything like this in your 35 years here?
Never. We've been suffering through this drought period, and the whole state's conserving water, and you can only water your lawn once a week. And I think the weather gods, the weather steward, decided to try to make us good in one small period of time, because it's been raining, like you said, for 2.5 months out here.
Yeah, we've been told for as long as I've been here that we're in a drought. And I talked with a climatologist, because I work for the news station, the radio news station here in L.A. I talked to a climatologist earlier this week, and I asked him, I said, if we had all of this rain that we've had in the last 3 months spread out over 5 years, we wouldn't be in a drought, would we? And he said, no, we would not be in a drought. But we've had it all in one year, 1 3-month period, and we can't use all the rain we've gotten. So that brings us to the weekend of our super tour, and the forecast for LA County. Another weather guy I talked to said that they could not remember this ever happening before, but they had posted blizzard warnings for Los Angeles County. And I'm going to guess you don't remember ever having a blizzard warning in Los Angeles County either, Mark, right?
Well, no, never. And it's so strange in that we're sea level,
right?
So what are they talking about? So it's got it's one of those things that like gets everybody really excited.
Yeah, and I didn't realize when I moved here 8 years ago how hilly and mountainous Southern California was. All I think of is the beaches and Venice and Hollywood, and I did not realize until I had to drive over the mountain the first time that there's actually legit hills out here. And we get snow in the mountains all the time, but never down at lower levels like they were predicting, and that was the whole blizzard warning thing. So Kevin, you're coming to LA to be the head poobah for this particular super tour event. I'm guessing one of the things you do for every event is you start looking at the forecast. My guess is like 10 days out, right? Because you really can't count on anything earlier than that, right?
Well, yeah, and just to know what to pack. I mean, come from Chicago, I pack everything anyways, and of course, weather plays in everything. And even I think it was Tuesday before the event, Mark, I had reached out to, said, hey, so how good does the track drain? He goes, piece of cake, no problem. It drains good. We had rain here a little while ago, and it drained just fine. And it drained just fine on Friday, even during the day.
It did. So, and coming from Chicago, so I live in L.A., but I come from where you live. I'm a Midwestern, born in Chicago, raised in Wisconsin, schooled in Minnesota. So I know winter, okay? I know blizzards. I went through the blizzard of 77. I went through the blizzard in '92, so I know what weather is. When you heard blizzard warnings in LA, what was your first thought?
I was like, okay, they said, go to California in February. Sounds like a wonderful plan. No, it's not supposed to be part of that plan.
Right. So when so one of the things that you probably learned is that we don't have the equipment out here to deal with a blizzard. You know, there are some snow plows for the mountain passes, but that's what they're there for, and they use them a little bit, and then that's about it. So Thursday night, I've heard all these, you know, warnings, and of course I do radio news, so I'm actually giving all these warnings, and people are accusing us of being, you know, oh my God, it's, you know, you're causing panic and everything, and you know, but we do our diligent thing of doing the weather, and I'll be honest, what people might not know is we still have 22 days later now since this event. We're 22 days past that Super Tour event. 22 days later, there are still people stranded in their homes in the San Bernardino Mountains, an hour and a half from here. So we were not being overly dramatic when we were warning people. But so Thursday, I'm doing my thing, trying to get across and up to Buttonwillow. And there's one, to get to Buttonwillow from Southern California, Mark, there's only a couple of ways to do it. And all of them involve mountain passes pretty much, right?
Yep, unless you want to drive up the coast, and unfortunately, that doubles the
Right.
trip, mileage and time and everything. So yeah, there's 2 mountain passes. You either come from Los Angeles straight up the 5 freeway, or you come from Palmdale, Lancaster, up through Tehachapi on
Right.
the 58 freeway, and they both go through some high altitudes, high elevation roadways.
So those of us who could and understand how all of that works tried to get up here on Thursday night, and a lot of us did. I came through the I-5, we call it the Grapevine. I would say probably about 5:30 on Thursday night. It was snowing, and it was like not just like a flurry. It was legit coming down on Thursday night, but it wasn't sticking because it was still pretty warm at that point in time. And so I got across the Grapevine without any issues. A lot of other workers and drivers and teams had done that as well. Mark, you came up, Kevin, you came up earlier, right?
No, actually, I came up after you.
Okay.
The race director, Mike West, and his wife picked me up at LAX about 6:15, and then we headed north, got some food. So I think we cleared fine at about 8:30-ish. At that point, it was completely fine. I mean,
Right.
nothing to get concerned about whatsoever.
Right.
But then I heard that it closed at something like 11, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's how they normally do it in these types of situations. So we all wake up Friday morning, and you know, we had some a lower car count than usual, right, Mark? And I'm guessing we attribute that to what people saw on the forecast, probably.
Sure, you know, it's something, you're a racer, and you've got to either go over the mountains or whatever, and you don't decide not to do it. So yeah, that was definitely you know, it impacted the car count.
But those who were there got up on Friday morning, and we had rain. The Buttonwillow is pretty much too low in the desert altitude wise to get snow. I don't think it would have to be really crazy for Buttonwillow to get snow. But we could see it on the mountains 50 miles away, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, so for us, it was primarily a rain event. And, well, it was an entire rain event in more ways than one. Friday, it rained pretty steadily all day. We got all of our qualifying in, no problems. And we all went to bed Friday night thinking, you know, and that we'd get some more rain on Saturday, but the track drains well. I've been to Buttonwillow now for 10 years, almost 10 years. Never saw the track have to get shut down for anything other than like heavy puddling for a short period of time that just drained away after the rain stopped. And I think that's only happened once or twice. And I think that was more visibility was probably why we stopped racing, and maybe even some lightning for the workers. But I don't remember any track blockage, and maybe I'm giving a deep tease here as to what we woke up to Saturday morning. So Saturday it rained all night. We were in. I was in Bakersfield, staying overnight. Rained all night long. Woke up a couple times in the middle of the night. Rain, rain, rain. I'm like, Saturday's gonna stink, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna have fun. Try to anyway. So I get to the track on Saturday morning, and doing my thing, and all of a sudden I start hearing rumblings. The rumor mill. People are talking about, we might have to delay our start. I'm like, okay, delay our start. That's kind of cool. We do that every once in a while. I didn't understand what was happening. Mark, when did you first find out on Saturday morning that there might be something going on?
So, as race chairman, I'm kind of up early and making sure the ball's rolling in the right direction and everything. And the track does a good job of maintaining. They sweep every morning and stuff. And the track maintenance guys had gone out to sweep, and they got to a particular stretch of racetrack that was unpassable, basically. Had the river flowing through it. It was pretty big area, and we knew we had a problem at that point in time. That might have been 7 a.m. type of thing.
So
when that happened.
I have some pictures that I was sent from Kevin. These are I'm going to cut to them now. We can talk over them. This is what it looked like Saturday morning. You guys can't see these, I don't think. But it's the pictures of Saturday morning. The one I'm looking at right now has full track blockage. This is the area. We number things weird, Mark, at Buttonwillow, because we run the track in both directions. How would you describe which part of the racetrack this is?
So this is the short, straight section that parallels the Fry Freeway. So it's going from what we refer to turn 14 to 13, basically. And we were going, unfortunately, we were reducing in turn numbers as we went forward, kind of backwards wise. But yeah, it's you can see from the picture that life wasn't good at that point in time.
Right. So Kevin, when did you first hear there might be a problem?
Well, Mike and me and the role as clerk of the course, we get there in time for the worker meeting, which is 7:15. So we're there a few minutes before that. I don't think we even had our shoes on the ground getting out of the car, and Mark was there to say, we're going to be on a little bit of a hold. We have a little bit of water on the track, and thought, okay, we can deal with it. So we went to go take a little ride. And then you saw what we saw on those pictures.
Right. And at that point, when you were thought a little hold, what was your best guesstimate at that point in time?
I was thinking a couple hours, because at that point, when we got out there, they were just starting to set up the pumps.
And it was still raining.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
It was still raining. But they were just in the process of setting up the pumps at that point. So it was still getting in the not good direction, but figured, okay, get a couple good sized pumps, because they were some pretty honking pumps that they had out there.
Right.
Figure, okay, we can get ahead of this.
And I was told, Mark, that the depth of that area at the time, if you were to go all the way into that, was about hub deep on a good sized pickup truck, right?
It was waist deep. We watched, you got to give credit to the Buttonwillow maintenance community. Those guys, they lost their shoes in the mud. You did that as a kid. Well, we watched them do that. They were out there, that unfortunately all that water, there's mud underneath it, and they, trying to walk through that stuff to set those pumps up, and you have the big struggle of where do you put that water?
Yeah.
So that it doesn't come back. So they had to hook long hoses together, throw it over in the farmer's field next door, over on the other side of a berm, so it wouldn't come back. But as Kevin was saying, we all looked at it and thought it was going to be just a couple hours, but you don't have the scope of how big that lake of water was. It went around the track on the outside, and we just found the low point. The low point was where it was crossing the track.
Right.
So you have to keep pumping and pumping and pumping, and wasn't pretty.
Yeah. So, and if I understand correctly, when they started pumping over the berm, what was happening was it was going over the berm, then flowing down to the end of the berm, and then coming right back, right?
No, actually, we were lucky enough that the berm was pretty solid all the way across. But what was happening was that the lake was so big, the pool of water that we had to get rid of that was crossing the track was so big that it wasn't making a dent. The water just kept coming. Yeah, the lake sunk, but there was, half a mile away, the lake was still there, and it was, we just were at the low point, and you had to drain the whole thing before you could get it to stop.
And throughout this whole time, we're making announcements over the PA to the drivers and crews and letting them know what was going on. And where during the day, at what point, Kevin, did you say to yourself, this track in this configuration is not raceable today?
Well, Mark kept going out to the scene, and he kept calling me and giving me updates. And at one point, he said words to the effect that this just isn't working. I can tell a difference, but it's not going to help us for today.
Right.
And so that's when Mike West, the race director, and myself, we also grabbed the local chief steward, Maggie Clark. We got in the car and went out there to look for ourselves a second time and said, yeah, we can tell a difference, but
yeah, well,
it's not going to help.
And that's about what time Saturday morning, would you say? I'm going to say
probably
9:30. Yeah. Okay.
9:30, quarter to 10.
All right.
And so at that point, then it was just a matter of, okay, we know we're racing, just how?
Right. Before we get to that, let's take our break. Because what happens in the next 2 hours is nothing short of a miracle. And at least I look at it that way. I think probably everyone knew it could get done, but I've been around the country and raced in a lot of different places with a lot of different regions and a lot of different racetracks. And what happened in that 2 hour period was pretty amazing. So let's do this. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about how we went racing at Buttonwillow on that Saturday. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Decades of sports car racing success comes from Goodyear Racing Tires' dedication to grassroots motorsports. Too many trophies and championships to count, and a commitment to continuing that tradition fuels continued tire development. From the professional levels of motorsports to the pinnacle of amateur racing in the SCCA, Goodyear Racing Tires are made for winning trophies. Follow @RaceGoodyear on Facebook or scan the QR code. Goodyear Racing is more driven.
Sentinel by Candelaria Racing Products is a comprehensive motorsports video system, incorporating live streaming, local recording, picture-in-picture, flag status, leaderboards, data overlays, and more. Perfect for endurance racing, sprint racing, and HPDE, Sentinel includes everything you need to get started. With the ability to control the live feed from the cloud, and GPS Auto Start will never miss an on-track moment. What are you waiting for? Get your Sentinel today.
Vintage Racers for Rescues. Racers rescuing dogs and cats from high-kill rural shelters and high-risk situations. Virginia and North Carolina have the third highest euthanasia rate in the U.S., and Vintage Racers for Rescues founders Robin and Dave Handy decided to do something about it. Vintage Racers for Rescues is a 501c3 charity that saves between 300 and 400 animals every year, nursing them back to health, finding foster homes, and eventually forever homes. VintageRacersForRescues.com. Use the QR code to find them on the web or to make a donation.
Corgi Sport is your one-stop shop for new and used mini parts and accessories. Whether it's driven on the street or on the racetrack, we have everything you need. From the small interior parts all the way to used and rebuilt motors. And with our sponsorship of the GPM race team, who travel to more than 30 tracks east of the Mississippi, We have a built-in delivery system that can save money on delivering large parts. Our line of Corgi Sport apparel celebrates the special bond between mini owners and their dogs. Mention this ad for a 10% discount at corgisport.com.
Welcome back to Inside the SCCA. I'm Brian Belansky. Mark Smith, Kevin Coulter, my guests today, talking about the Super Tour that almost didn't happen, but did. Thank you guys for being here with me tonight. So we've gotten through all of the morning, and we figured out there's a problem, and we figured out that problem in that particular way is not solvable on Saturday. And that's where the design of Buttonwillow was golden for us. Mark or Kevin, there's a lot of racetracks that we race at that if this were a situation at a different racetrack, we'd be done, right?
That's probably 90% of the tracks in the country were toast.
Yeah.
Buttonwillow's configuration is what led to this, us being able to run. Because if we did not have the alternatives, all the different variations, we would not have been able to run.
Right.
For the rest of the week. We've been done for the weekend.
So Mark, there are 27 different configurations, give or take, right? And most of them can be run in both directions, right?
Yep, that's correct. They all can be run in both directions. But one of the unique things that when the track was being built, that Cal Club, who owns the track, one of the things we asked for was the ability to hold two events at the same time. So in the past, we've had a driver's school and a regional on the same day, but on basically two different tracks. So the whole track actually you split it in half, and they're separate but safe.
Right.
Can be done separately. So yeah, when we requested that, and the track designed and built it, and this is one of the times it paid off.
Right. But when you did that, you had decided to run that type of setup weeks ahead of the race, right?
Exactly.
So you didn't decide 2 hours before race time that you were going to go and race on a different race configuration, right?
Exactly. I mean, and I'm sure this is where you're leading to.
It is.
There was a ton of stuff that had to change. I mean, you come in and you're ready to do one big configuration. You have everything set up. You have all your assets in place, and suddenly you can't make that happen, and you have to make a change.
Right.
And and I think this is where the effort to make it all happen is trying to be recognized. So.
Right. So Kevin, you and Mike and Maggie sitting in the car, knowing that you can't go racing on the full racetrack. How long was it to make the decision we're going to make a move? And did you have to give a call to Topeka to talk with folks? And because when we set up a race, there are sanction numbers. It's all kind of set in stone for the most part how a weekend's supposed to run. So did you have to make a call to the higher ups and say, here's our situation and here's what we want to do and can we do it?
Well, once we were on hold for a known period of time, at that point, I already texted Eric and Deanna. And then when we were in the car, we went around a couple times trying to figure out what is the best of the 27 configurations or remaining configurations that we can run in, giving the drivers as much track time as possible, length of the track. And also, too, that if a driver, let's say Brian's in a spec racer, and he overshoots a corner and just locks them up, that he's not going swimming out in the Pacific Ocean.
And that was
a large consideration,
right? I mean, that was a big part because yes, the western side of the racetrack was the track itself had not a lot of water, no huge lakes, maybe some puddles here and there, but there were still areas off the track where it could be dangerous if you got there, right?
Exactly, and so. What was fortunate was this exact configuration Mark referenced that they've used for the driver's school and stuff was, after several laps, decided to be the safest way to go. The smallest amount of straight off water puddles. At that point, we placed a call to Deanna and said, okay, this is what we got. You good with it? And she said, go with what you got.
Right.
And came back in. We talked to Mark because he was ready. He knew we were making a move with just which particulars. And then it was go time.
All right, so Mark, Kevin comes to you, says, here's the plan. Tell me about the series of decisions that had to be made at that point to get everything moved. And there was one in particular about timing and scoring. We'll talk about that kind of at the end of this. But how did you get your team going to get this thing done? Because it was not an easy prospect.
So, it impacted everybody, every specialty, with probably the exception of tech, because it was tech didn't have to change or move. But getting the track maintenance people on board as soon as possible, the heavy lifting, we had to move some concrete walls on the front straight to allow us to have access. It was built that way, but have access to this new track, an entry road to the track type of thing. So getting them to do that in the middle of trying to pump water was difficult, but they jumped at it and got that done. Our grid area, it had to change 180 degrees. Entry was one way, exit was a different way. So all of that had to be put in place.
And about half the grid area, Mark, was underwater too.
Luckily, it's wide enough,
right.
So they were able to scoot to the dry part. What was I saying? I forgot.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
But all of that stuff had to happen, and then of course, you talked about the monster in the building, the timing and scoring.
Right.
Well, luckily enough for us that there's a timing loop over there. So we're lucky in the Super Tour world to have Skibby and Carol Reber, doing the timing and scoring stuff for us. And the only unknown, the biggest unknown, the thing that we really had to check out first was if the timing loop worked.
When was the last time that timing loop was used?
It was probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, somewhere in that range. Obviously, we don't use it for schools, but we run regionals on that section before, so it's been used. And again, so it's humorous in that the timing shack is about 4 by 4. I mean, it's not that small, but it's pretty small. But we use it as the sound shack when we're taking sound readings.
Right.
And so we've got to get Carol and Skibby and all of their computers and all of that equipment out. Well, it's on the far side of one of our lakes, our new rain-made lakes. And it's in part of our problem is it's been raining for months and the ground is saturated.
Right.
It's not. So how do we get them and their equipment out through all of this grass and dirt area to their shack? So the only way we could do that was with a golf cart, of all things. But that golf cart got stuck 3 or 4 times and had to be rescued by the track's ATV, side by side. But it was we got there. Skibby set his stuff up right away. Everything worked. That was really the big thing that we had to overcome, because we really would have been hard to hold the event without any timing and scoring.
Right. Yeah, it would have been hard. And and as being one of the broadcasters, while our part of the operation of the event is not at all mission critical, trying to broadcast 8 races without timing and scoring, I mean, we're not that exciting with timing and scoring, and but we're really unexciting without timing and scoring. So I am like, please make this work, please make this work, gosh, please make this work. And credit to both Carol and Skibby, they got out there and they put it all together, and you know, and it's got to be what, 800 yards, 1,000 yards from the big tower to that timing shack. It's not like it's a close move. And I was wondering if the power was going to work out there and all of the other bits and things that you need. There was no air, there was no heat. So, we were all giving Carol extra clothing that we had brought to the racetrack so that she could stay warm out there. It was just a lot of work to get that going, and they did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, the other specialty I was talking about was flagging. So,
right,
you got to move all of those people to new stations. Those stations, we're lucky enough here in Cal Club and at Buttonwillow to have landlines versus radio. So we had to, hook up new landlines and make sure that system, that loop was working and all that kind of stuff. And it was, again, the Buttonwillow facility track, people. Their staff just stepped up and went out of their way to try to make it work. Not their fault that it rained and their ground wouldn't absorb it, but they stepped up and enabled us to make a good stab at putting on a good weekend.
So Kevin, from an operational standpoint, all right, the decision's been made, all of the things are moving, the specialties are doing what needs to be done to get racing. You've got a super tour. This is the elite top of the rung SCCA road racing event. And you've got drivers who are about to go racing on a configuration that a good bit of them have never seen before. What are you and your team doing to decide, okay, there's been no qualifying on this configuration, so we don't even know where to grid them. Many of them have never driven on this configuration before. How did you guys come up with the plan that you came up with to get us to racing once it was time to put cars on this racetrack?
So while Mark was starting the move process, while the track people from Buttonwillow were working on the walls and stuff like that, Mike West, the race director, had a driver's meeting. And I had already run upstairs once, because when I come to an event, my role as clerk of the course is execute a schedule. Mark and his team put out a schedule that we looked at 3 months ago or whatever. That comes preloaded to my laptop, but I also have a separate tab where I adjust if things happen, engines blow, whatever the case may be. So I knew we're about where we needed to be on time, but the question was how long was it going to take to get all this other stuff. And the one that really scared me was the timing loop, because, when Mark first said, it's been about 3 years since we've used it. And I'm thinking, okay, all this water, that wiring is toast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we'd all agree with that lake, seeing that lake where that was. Brian, I don't know if you got out there, but that was...
Oh, I did.
It was a canoe.
Yeah.
It needed a canoe. So Mike held the driver's meeting, and yes, the concern was they haven't seen it before. We knew we could give them some qualifying. So everything from Friday went out the window. Just how long, we didn't know. So at this point, we got word that the wall was opened. So we said, okay, go ahead, go around slowly behind the safety car in your street cars. We can still do, Mark said he had enough of the stuff moved to where we could use the black top or the wet top for them to make 3 or 4 laps behind the safety car and at a slow speed so they could just get used to it. The beauty with the configuration we used, it's really what, Mark, maybe a third of a mile is all that they really had not been on right. Friday, because it's just from the normal front straightaway to the back. And then the rest of the loop all the way down towards Mazda and all that stuff was all the same track. So it's only really a couple corners
right.
that they had to learn.
So for folks who are familiar with racing at Buttonwillow, who may not have seen what we did, it was basically the entire west loop, and then the cut through to go back to the dog leg was just before or after, depending on which direction we're racing, the start-finish line. So it completely eliminates the start stand that we normally use. We were running in a clockwise direction. So you would come down the front straight, you'd make this hard right 90-degree almost. It was a little bit of a sweeper, cut across the infield towards the dog leg, and then get back there and head down towards Riverside. So that was the configuration that we used. And Kevin, you're right. All of that track is stuff that we use all the time, except for that cut through. So
right. And so it was just the idea of giving the drivers at least some familiarity, because they weren't going to have a long qualifying. They were not going to have a normal qualifying session. And at that point, we were thinking maybe 8 to 10 minutes, because we didn't know when we had the meeting what time we were starting.
Right. So qualifying's are those parade laps are done. And we were joking about, we created a new class, spec pickup, because 90% of the drivers out there were driving around in their tow vehicles, which I thought was hilarious. But that was fun to watch as everyone was scrambling to get things done. Let's do this. I think this is a good place to take the first our last break. Before we talk about how we got to racing and how that all worked out, and then Sunday morning as well. So let's do that. Let's take our break, and then when we come back, we'll go racing, and we'll talk about all the rest of it. Stay with us. Decades of sports car racing success comes from Goodyear Racing Tires' dedication to grassroots motorsports. Too many trophies and championships to count, and a commitment to continuing that tradition fuels continued tire development. From the professional levels of motorsports to the pinnacle of amateur racing in the SCCA, Goodyear Racing Tires are made for winning trophies. Follow @RaceGoodyear on Facebook or scan the QR code. Goodyear Racing is more driven. The Roadkeeper HD video and data logger was developed using our experience in motorsports, driving experiences, and beyond. It brings dual stream HD video combined with high-quality GPS data within reach of everyone at the track or on the road. Travinci Systems is an official Runoffs contingency sponsor, and it's not too late to sign up. On-site registration is available at the contingency desk in Tech. The Roadkeeper HD meets SCCA's requirements for forward-facing cameras. Take advantage of 2022 Runoffs pricing for the Roadkeeper HD, $324 plus shipping. That's $75 off. Offer is good through Christmas.
Grass Paddock Motorsport provides Mini Cooper race car rentals, trackside support, and coaching at tracks all over the eastern half of the country. GPM provides podium-capable rentals for B-Spec, the fastest-growing class of racing in the SCCA, for 3 years running, and now the 4th largest class overall. We have a unique approach where our cars are located near the track you want to race instead of being in a central location with large towing fees. Come join us at Grass Paddock Motorsports, where Grass Paddock is an attitude and not a location. Mention this ad for a 10% discount and find us at www.grasspaddock.com.
Racing for Heroes is proud to be a partner of Inside the SCCA. RFH is a nonprofit devoted to helping veterans suffering from the seen and unseen wounds of war through racing and our range of programs. RFH's programs include health and wellness, motorsports therapy, community outreach, education, and employment. Visit racingforheroes.org to learn more and find out how you can help. Cruise Associates is honored to have sponsored this message. And we're back inside the SCCA. I'm Brian Belansky, Mark Smith, Kevin Coulter, my guests, talking about our Buttonwillow Super Tour, the great adventure that it was. And we've gone through all of the heroics that were gone through to get to racing. Now it's about noon on Saturday, give or take. I think we went racing at 12:15, or at least started qualifying.
11:45 cars on track.
11:45. It's I'm still dealing with some trauma from this weekend, so I don't have all of the times in my head. 11:45 cars on track, and Kevin, it really couldn't have gone any better, could it have?
No, it went smooth. I want to back up a bit, because once we got the idea of where we were going, we saw we were making progress, had timing up. Then it became, what are we going to do as far as how long the sessions are? And then that's where, thank you, Dr. Excel comes in and spreadsheet. And I talked with Mark, and I said, what time do we have at the track? So he goes, You're dark at 5:45. I said, all right, so we're off by 5:30, and just worked backwards. And we came up with 12-minute qualifying sessions. Again, not ideal for Super Tour and 20-minute races. Again, not 100% ideal, but it was what we had. And then we just kept hauling. Props to the workers, because one thing they had to move was their lunch. So their lunch was done while we were still setting everything up and the parade laps were going on. Their worker breaks went out the window. Things that you don't even think about, things like porta potties, which Buttonwillow has plenty of them, except I thought a couple were going to float away. So we were having to send out in between races a couple of emergency vehicles, bring people in to use the necessary facilities.
Right.
Again, that's something that would not have happened any other time, except for the track conditions.
Mark, you know, we at NCal Club, and for those of you who haven't figured it out, you know, I call Pasadena home now. So my home track now is Buttonwillow, and you know, I've been fortunate enough to be members of lots of regions across the country. Started in Chicago and Milwaukee region, Atlanta region, up in the Northeast. So I've been a part of a lot of regions. And I've been out here as part of a Cal Club member now for almost 10 years. And Mark, we really, I think, we don't talk about it much outwardly. And I don't talk about it much outwardly. But as someone who's been part of a lot of regions, I don't think there's any region out there who does customer service better than Cal Club. You and CC and the team work really, really hard to give the drivers what they want, the experience that they want. You work really hard to give the workers the best experience they can possibly have, because our workers are our customers too. If we don't make them happy, they're not coming back, and if we don't have workers, we don't go racing. What were you hearing, Mark, from the drivers as we're going through all of this, getting ready to try to go racing, even with this compressed schedule?
You know, I had the opportunity to sit around in the impound area and talk to a couple of them, and they were more than happy just to have the opportunity to race. And like I heard so many times, was they had expected that it would just pack up and go away and cancel the weekend. It was, you know, that was their expectation when they woke up and they got to the track and they saw how bad it was. You know, as the race chairman, as a Cal Club member, as a worker, you know, that you want people to come to your racetrack. You want them to have fun, and they want to leave having a good time. You know, being whether they're successful racing or not, that's one thing, but you don't want to be responsible for them leaving with a bad opinion of the event, of the facility, of the track. And again, the feedback when they came in after their qualifying sessions in impound, after the on victory stand on Saturday, was just, you know, giddy. They were giddy. They were having fun. You know, a side story, we had, you know, the two of the hot P1 drivers, Davenport and
Chip Hare.
Chip Hare, yeah, Romer.
Right.
Romer, Chip Romer. And, you know, those guys were nose to tail running sub 1 minute laps, and they got out laughing, giggling, said, you know, this is kind of the most fun we've had. Yeah, it is a short track. If you've got a P1 car, you're going to do 1 minute laps, but you're constantly turning and you're constantly busy, but it had a good flow. So they had a ball. And that's kind of the story that I was hearing from many of the drivers. Kevin might have heard more up the chain, but it was a good, they enjoyed it, the opportunity to race.
Well, and I'd just like to add that amongst the Super Tour traveling staff, the region, we never discussed pulling the plug on the weekend, because, you know, once we were out there first thing Saturday morning, we always had the back of our head, we know we've got something else we can work with. Wasn't sure exactly what, but we knew we had something else to work with. So we were always at it. We're putting cars on track. Yes. Our first goal was hopefully to get the track pumped and maybe just dump Saturday morning qualifying, race on the full track by 1 o'clock.
Right.
But again, we had figured 1 o'clock, that was our drop dead. We had to be racing by then, or else it wasn't happening. But we never entertained asking people to pack up.
Right. You know, Kevin, the configuration that we used reminds me of a track that I know you are really familiar with, and that's Black Hawk Farms.
Yeah.
It was about the same distance.
Yes.
I think it was about the same number of corners, and because the weather kind of put the brakes on some of the drivers coming in the first place, we didn't have big fields, and I think that the racing was almost better on the smaller track because it made a more compressed action. And when we had the smaller fields, we had some races that on the big track might have been kind of snoozers, and they weren't by any stretch. There wasn't a snoozer of a race all weekend long.
No, because once we went racing, the track is so short, there was always action coming. You get a few laps in, there was always something coming. And the other thing too is it was an equalizer. So I don't know how many drivers we had that had not run Buttonwillow a lot, but guess what? Everybody was on equal footing, having to learn at least that one section that was brand new.
Right.
And that's something I always enjoy, is watching something that's an equalizer where everybody's on the same footing. Doesn't matter who you are.
Right. And it was interesting because of this new section. One of the things that we had fun watching as the weekend developed was, and we talked about this with Scotty B. White on the broadcast, the exit onto what is normally the main straight, had to be taken differently to go fast because you were very quickly getting ready to transition into that new section of track. So there were people who were trying to take the section the way they always had, and that was not the fast way to go. And some drivers learned this really quick and got going fast, and other drivers, it took a while for them to realize, I can't do this that way. And it was actually good because the old way, the normal way, gives you a lot of incentive to go right out to the mud, and if you get out in the mud on this weekend, you were maybe not coming back. Whereas the proper way on the new configuration was to not go out that far and to cut back around to make that right-hander onto this new section. So it was just fun to watch the drivers adapt to this little bit of new track as the weekend wore on. So we had 8 good races. Was it 8 races? 7 races? I don't remember now. 7 races on Saturday. Pretty much, incident-free. Everyone played well, had some great finishes, and we went home Saturday night still thinking we might try to race on the big track on Sunday, right?
That was the hope. But by the time we left Saturday night, the water was traveling downhill west, whatever you want to call it, more towards the 17, 16, 15 area.
Right.
And that became our nemesis for Sunday morning.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the track itself was fairly clear, but going off in any of those areas, you might have needed a submarine to come and get you.
Ooh, actually, there was still enough water physically on the track in the 17, 16, 15 area. We lost, half the track at that area. The Saturday morning area was actually fine. That was completely raceable.
Right. Yeah, and it also rained overnight Saturday night again, too, which made it even more difficult. So Sunday morning, we got up. The decision was quickly made to go race the way we did on Sunday, and we did it again on Sunday.
Only change was Saturday night, my homework in the hotel room was calculate the number of laps for the new distance, because, again, trying to keep with the Super Tour and stuff like that, took the original miles that Mark and CC had come up with, got as close as I could with the new track distance, and that's how we came up with the number of laps for Sunday.
It was what? It was 29?
Yeah, 28 or 29,
28 or 29?
whatever it was.
Yeah, I don't remember a Super Tour with 29 laps. It's been I don't know how many we get at Hallett, but I think Hallett's the shortest one of all of them, right? Yeah. So
The shortest plan.
exactly, the shortest plan. That's true. Exactly. So, what did we learn? You know, this is one of those things where you get yourself, you put on your I'm focused on getting this weekend done, and you know, it's kind of adapt and overcome. It's you know, you get to get into get her done mode. Now we're 3 weeks out. We're 3 weeks past. We're all dry. We've had a chance to reflect a little bit. Let's start with you, Kevin. What was learned? What might you do differently if it happens again? What did we learn?
What we learned is what great teamwork we have. I mean, we have people from all across the country, the traveling staff with SCCA, the local people from the Buttonwillow track, the facility people, the Cal region people. We all come together with a plan, and we deal with the things that Mother Nature gives us, you know, and everybody just was flexible. That was the thing, is when something like this happens, everybody's got to be flexible, and everybody was completely, again, from the drivers, the crews, you know, every volunteer, especially as Mark said, you know, tech was the only one that was not affected. I mean, the one thing you didn't mention was start and finish were not in the same place.
Oh yeah, that too.
We had starter in one place and finish was another place, and no, there was not a painted line across the track, but it's where the loop was where the finish line was. But everybody came together to say, okay, we've got an icky situation. How we can make this to where we can come out here and do what we want to do, have fun with cars, right? And I think we did. You know, Mark was down in the paddock more than I was. I was up with you right up in the tower. And I want to also thank you, Brian, for, you know, you were the one was my mouthpiece on the PA. And then I was texting or calling Mark's wife, Cece, to get text blast out with the new schedule, new start time, all that type of stuff. And without that communication piece, it's difficult, you know, but everyone was so flexible. It worked well together.
I'm laughing only because I think I might be the only one the entire weekend to actually screw up. And that was on Saturday when you would call the drivers meeting to tell the drivers what the plan was. And I didn't realize when I was talking on the stream that I was also going out over the PA. And I spilled the beans to everybody before you guys even had a chance to start your drivers meeting. And like I was like, and everyone's like, running up, the PA's on, the PA's on. I'm like, what's that mean? Why is it ever a problem? Oh crap! I know why it's a problem. I'm just telling the whole world what they're trying to have a drivers meeting for. So I think I was the only one the whole weekend to screw up, but it was fun. It was fun. Mark, what did you learn?
Kevin mentioned it, you know, the flexibility part. You know, we as race organizers, we as the Super Tour team, I'm part of the Super Tour staff. You know, we go in with a lot of rules. You know, we live by rules, and you know, it's got to do this. But you know, there's times where those rules have to be altered a bit to be, you know, to make something work. And you know, keeping everybody informed. So Brian, you leaked some stuff out, but you know, gosh darn it, if you let your customers, the racers, the crews know what you're going through and get an understanding of the decisions, then I mean they'll jump right on board and they'll help you. They'll make it. I mean, we had drivers offer up things that they had in their trailer. We had Mark Ballingy from Spec Racer Ford guys. He's got a farm just down the road. He was ready to pack his truck up and and go back to the farm and bring pumps out to help us work. You know, you gotta if you tell people what you're doing, it makes it a lot easier getting their buy-in to why you're doing it. Right. And you know, that was part of it. And there's no planning you can do in case something like this happens. You know, you know, unless there's other tracks out there that have multiple configurations, there's, you know, I don't know how there's anything that we could have done to if we had if we were at say we were at Willow Springs, one of our other Southern California tracks. If part of that track got flooded, there's nothing that we could have done.
Right.
You just kind of, we were lucky in the fact that the track was designed the way it was. So, and it's just, again, keeping everybody informed and having a good group and kind of having fun. Don't stress out. I don't think anybody got, hysterically, crazy. And, that happens at times, and that really just makes things worse. And everybody was just calm and just made it happen. And, the best I can do.
Yeah. That was the one part that I thought was remarkable, because there's always one person in the group who goes cray-cray when something like this happens. And I don't think anybody did that, which I thought was really remarkable. Everybody seemed like they're like, okay, we're just going to make it happen. And we went along and did our thing and all of that. Mark, any discussions now that we're past this about, digging a trench to have water pointed in another direction if this were to ever happen again? Any thoughts on that?
So, we've been at Buttonwillow forever, very tight with the track and the people that work there and the design and everything. Never ever been this bad. Never been this bad. So, and that's been, it's like 25 years. So, after 25 years, if you got through 25 years, is it really necessary to do something radical?
Fair enough.
But at the same time, the track people are learning. We're in the process of building. Cal Club is in the process of building a new track at Buttonwillow. So now that we've had the opportunity to get this much water, they've been actually overlooking at the new track before it finally gets paved to see where the water's flowing. So to see if they have to do any changes, deviations of building higher berms or whatever. So, that's something that the track has learned. They did go out and buy more pumps. So they do have more pumps. And and Brian, we're getting ready to have a race this weekend or next weekend.
Yep.
And it's been raining here forever. So the pumps are getting a good workout right now. So
I'm going to ask you each one more question before I tell a short story, before we get out. Anything that you would said to yourself when you were done, oh, we should have done that different? Let's start with Kevin. The answer could be no.
I think with the deck of cards we were dealt, and again, I mean, if I have my crystal ball working to know that the pumps weren't going to be able to pump us off, we started a little bit earlier, but I think we did things as quickly as we possibly could to get everybody on track and get everybody every minute of track time we possibly could, which was the goal.
Right.
That's always the goal of Super Tour. Give everybody every second of track time that they pay for.
Same question to you, Mark. Anything that you would do differently today?
I don't believe so. I mean, I had ideas. I kind of made the ball go in the other direction, but it was all the people around me that made it happen.
So there was one driver, Mark, and I can't remember his name, but you might remember it, who showed up on Sunday morning after leaving, I believe, on Thursday night to try to get to Buttonwillow. And racing that weekend was very important for him, I think, to get the points to qualify for the runoff. So he was coming to Buttonwillow, come hell or high water, literally. And he made it Sunday morning at 6 a.m. I ran into him in registration. He looked exhausted and frustrated and happy as could be to be at Buttonwillow. After it took him 40 hours to get from San Diego, which is only about normally 4 hours south of Buttonwillow?
Yeah. 4 or 5 hours.
Do you remember who it was? GT3 driver?
Yeah, that was Tony Rivera.
That's
from
exactly.
San Diego.
Yep.
Yeah, the story goes, we talked about the 3 different ways to get to Buttonwillow.
Yep.
Well,
he tried all 3.
He tried all 3 more than once and drove in excess of 800 miles in those days to get to the track. Got there first thing in the morning, and yeah, like you said, he was just happy to be there.
Yeah, I've never seen someone look so tired and so happy at the exact same time. All right, gentlemen, thank you. This was I just wanted to do this podcast because it was so much fun to go through this while we were doing it, and to see the club. And I'm just the bird's eye view guy. I'm looking from the outside. You guys are doing all the hard work. And it was just a marvel to see everyone come together and get it done. And I just want to thank you all, and to all the workers and the drivers who were there to get it going. I think everybody did just a really remarkable job. Any final thoughts from the two of you before I head out?
If I don't mention Cece and Laura on the victory stand, one of the things that we did have a problem with was trophies. They were stuck in the weather. They were stuck in Denver. So you show up to a super tour. Part of the fluff and circumstances of a super tour is the victory celebration, victory pop. They had no trophies. So they actually repurposed some of our Cal Club trophies with the super tour logos and all that kind of stuff, and went out of their way. And trying to do a victory stand in the rain and all that kind of stuff, they really made it fun. So kudos to the victory people.
There you go. All right. That's going to do it for another episode of Inside the SCCA. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe to the Racing Wire Podcast Network so you won't miss an episode. Also, subscribe to the Racing Network on YouTube. It'd be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. If it's not, put it on someone else's page. You can follow us on social media to find out who our next guest is. Leave a question. On Twitter, it's @RacingWireNet. There's a new Inside the SCCA every week. I'm Brian Belansky. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. Stay safe and go play with cars.